Ian Foster will not be seeking a contract extension as the All Blacks head coach. His contract expires at the end of the 2023 Rugby World Cup, so let's have a look at who could replace him for this job. While a lot of people seem to believe it is just a one-man for the job possibility, I've shortlisted 18 possible candidates to replace Ian Foster. Let's take it away. Kia ora guys, welcome back to the Black Jersey. My name's Max and I'm the host of this channel. There are a lot of people out there in the world who believe Scott Robertson, otherwise known as Razor, I will address him that way for the rest of the video, they believe Razor is the only possible person who could replace Ian Foster as the All Blacks head coach. He has won 6 Super Rugby titles in a row. He is on the way to winning a 7th right now, with the Crusaders slashing the Highlanders into many little bits in their recent Super Rugby fixture that has happened in the Super Round. Well guys, I'd consider it to be more of a 3-horse race. Razor, Jamie Joseph and Leon MacDonald, they are the possible candidates who I think are in this 3-horse race as the front runners for the job. Jamie Joseph has been the Japan coach since 2016. He has got a 53% win ratio with them, which is not too bad considering once upon a time Japan were absolutely smashed by every single tier 1 opponent they would ever face. Eddie Jones in 2015 took them to their first Rugby World Cup win since 1991, with Jamie Joseph doing even better with them in 2019, taking them as host nation through to the World Cup quarterfinals after they topped the pool stage with victories over Ireland and Scotland for the first time in their history. Jamie Joseph was the Highlanders coach for a very long time as well, and he is the only Highlanders coach thus far to take them to a Super Rugby final, which they managed to win. They took out the title with Ben Smith and Nasi Manu as captain. Jamie Joseph has a very good feel for team culture, while he has international experience. NZR, the New Zealand Rugby Union, they tend to favour coaches with international experience over those who have had success Super Rugby. Scott Robertson, though a lot of people believe he's in the box seat these days, in 2019 he did indeed apply for the job against Ian Foster, and a lot of people believed Ian Foster had a stronger coaching ticket, hence why Sir Graham Henry in particular thought Ian Foster was a better person for the job. They were just the only 2 candidates who did indeed apply, and as neither of them had international experience, they went for Fozzie, as he had been in the All Black system as the assistant coach in charge of the backs for 8 seasons in a row. Razor though, things are starting to look very good for him right now. Jason Ryan, who was his forwards coach for many years in the Crusaders, has joined the All Blacks setup and has revolutionised the front row and the locks in the driving maul, whereas obviously there's Joe Schmidt to consider. Leon MacDonald's the 3rd person who I believe to be at the front of the race. He's coached the Blues since 2019 and they've undergone rapid improvements under MacDonald. Much like Joseph and Robertson, Leon MacDonald's taken a real feel for team culture into his strides as a coach, whereas he's built a high level of combined playing experience in his Blues team, whereas he's also got a real niche and skill for building depth. The likes of AJ Lamb, Zahn Sullivan, Corey Evans and Taufa Funaki are numerous backs in their team who could start for other Super Rugby teams. Jacob Ratumaitavuki Neepkins is also a possible back to start in all the other Super Rugby teams aside from the Blues. Those 3 are probably the strongest candidates that I would think are heading towards the job. Now we'll go to some unlikely picks. Clayton McMillan has been in charge of the Chiefs since 2021, and with Warren Gatland in charge in 2020, they didn't do so well. They were a young group who lacked in confidence quite a fair bit. Clayton McMillan was able to strengthen quite a lot in 2021, where they got to the Super Rugby final of the Aotearoa season, where the Crusaders unfortunately beat them. And of course in 2023 they've started very strong with a victory over the Crusaders. I don't consider Clayton McMillan as likely to get the job, as he's got the same level of experience in Super Rugby that Scott Robertson had back in 2019, and he doesn't quite have the trophies to go with it either. Joe Schmidt, another unlikely pick. I mentioned him earlier, but in 2018 he did indeed announce he would be retiring from being a head coach and that Andy Farrell would take over from him as the Irish head coach at the end of the 2019 World Cup. Joe Schmidt stated reasons for retiring as a head coach to include things such as wanting to spend more time with his family and wanting to have especially more time with his son who has a disability. Schmidt did say at the time he would remain involved with the game, and clearly, as I've said many times before, being an assistant coach is that method he has got of staying in the game. We can't count him quite out just yet though, as he is indeed a selector and the assistant coach in charge of the backs for the All Blacks. He's been a revolutionary attack coach for them thus far, and he's really transformed them from a very flat team into a thrilling contemporary attacking side. Jason Ryan himself is also a possibility. The one thing that I think is going against his favour though is he doesn't have any experience as a head coach. Though Jason Ryan could possibly take an Andy Farrell-like route, he is already in the All Blacks setup. A lot of the players know him very well, and for all we know, maybe he wants the job for himself. Let's have to see. Now here's a few left field picks as well. The first is Scott McLeod, who's been the All Blacks defence coach since 2017. Though he did that job for the Highlanders for a very long time, I couldn't quite find much of a history about him as a head coach. He was obviously well working with Jamie Joseph. He was part of that Highlanders setup when they won the Super Rugby title, but a lot of the Kiwi fans don't seem to know too much about them. They don't really seem to have his back. Greg Feek, another possibility. He's the All Blacks scrum coach, while Jason Ryan's of course the forwards coach. Greg Feek was the Irish scrum coach when Joe Schmidt was their head coach, so he could possibly stay on the ticket with Joe Schmidt, or if Joe Schmidt doesn't want to go for the job himself, maybe he could push Feek towards it. Feek and McLeod are both former All Blacks themselves. They know the setup very well from being coaches in there and players, but the reason I've chucked them down in this left field section is because they just don't have a crazy amount of experience as a head coach themselves. Another coach I've put into this category is Kieran Crowley, currently in charge of Italy. Back in 2021, I did the digging, and he signed a 3-year deal, which I'm assuming is through to 2024. So if he was to take charge of the All Blacks, they would have to buy him out of this contract. The thing's going in Crowley's favour though. He has got the highest win percentage of an Italian head coach in the professional era, whereas he's also previously coached Canada, and Canada became an awful shadow of themselves after Crowley left them to go coach Benetton Treviso over in Italy. Crowley is a former All Blacks fullback himself and was a winner of the 1987 Rugby World Cup. Crowley though has been out of New Zealand for a very long time, so I don't quite rate his chances as highly as Joe Schmidt's. Dave Rennie as well. You could possibly make that excuse up, but I do think that his 2 Chiefs titles were very much thanks to Wayne Smith, and he hasn't won any trophies as a head coach, aside from the 8 with the Wallabies ever since then. He wasn't able to pick up any in charge of the Glasgow Warriors, while his win percentage was also the worst of all time in terms of all of the Wallabies coach in history. He was sacked from that role at the end of 2022, so he has a very unlikely chance to become the All Blacks head coach, though Graham Henry would of course beg to differ. Tony Brown, perhaps he could do it as well. He's been the Highlanders coach for 3 seasons. They were a bit messy though. He had 2 in the 2020s and he had just the 1 season in 2018 as well. So it's a bit of a messy situation with Tony Brown as a head coach. I don't think he quite likes the whole media aspect, and he just wants to focus as part of an attacking setup. He would of course join Jamie Joseph if they were to take over though, because those two have been a coaching combo ever since their days coaching the Highlanders. Now I've got a few coaches who absolutely do not have a chance. Clark Dermody, it's his first year as the Highlanders coach right now. They've played 2 games under him and they're yet to get a win, so I don't think Clark Dermody's got any chance. Though he is a former All Black himself, he could possibly push for higher honours later down the track perhaps. Jason Holland, he's only been head coach for 4 years. He was an assistant coach all the way through until John Plumtree ditched the Hurricanes to be Ian Foster's initial forwards coach. So Holland, who had been an assistant coach for all those years, has suddenly been made a head coach for the Hurricanes. As he's yet to win a trophy as a head coach, I think that rules him out of the job. Robbie Deans, 63 years old, previously coached the Wallabies. He was last involved with the All Blacks set up in 2003 as an assistant coach, whereas he did win several trophies with the Crusaders, but he's been out of the country I think a bit too long to be considered, and he's at the retirement age. Wayne Smith, I don't think they're going to get him back. He announced his retirement, so that's just not happening. Same with Warren Gatland. Gatland has signed a contract with Wales through to 2027, and he effectively just dropped out of the race. He endorsed Scott Robertson, as you guys can see, so we're ruling Warren Gatland out of the job. Wayne Pivac sacked from Wales. I think that pretty much rules him out as well, as he never coached Super Rugby, though he did coach a few NPC teams while he was in New Zealand himself. And Pat Lam, he didn't succeed too well with the Blues, and he signed a contract extension with the Bristol Bears through to 2028. That rules him out. Now that we've taken a look of every single candidate through to left field picks, unlikely picks, and of course the coaches who don't have a chance, we return to the front runners for the job. Jamie Joseph, Scott Robertson, and Leon MacDonald, who are all former All Blacks themselves. If one of these three guys gets the job, it will be the first time a former All Black has coached the team since John Mitchell, who did not get a contract extension at the end of the 2003 Rugby World Cup. In terms of experience, Jamie Joseph fits the bill far more. As I've stated before, he coached the Highlanders for a very long time, as you can see through his record over here, and considering he doesn't have a very good talent pool over in Japan, it's been massive to see him get this many results. I've previously reviewed a few Japan matches, and the amount of intelligence that's been put into the thoughts of the tactics, it's unparalleled pretty much. So intelligent. Scott Robertson though, the drums have beated for him for a very long time, and they are beating louder and louder and louder, and especially with all of the media hyping Robertson up, he is getting pretty hard to ignore, so there's that factor in his side. Pretty much the only reason you can't count him in for the job is the fact that he hasn't had the international experience. He has, however, turned down the role with the Wallabies, he turned down a role with Fiji, he turns down a role with England, and it is also alleged that Scotland are currently having discussions with Leon MacDonald, who I consider the third man into this job. This leaves out Leon MacDonald because he also hasn't won as many trophies as Robertson. Robertson's coached in the Super Rugby League for 7 years, MacDonald's done it for 5. Robertson has won more trophies with 6, and MacDonald has won 1 trophy with the Blues. So that pretty much creates a situation of Scott Robertson versus Jamie Joseph. As Jamie Joseph is a bit more of an experienced coach, I think that is definitely going to help him with his favour a little bit more. Jamie Joseph as well, he's a bit older, this has given him more time to develop himself as a coach. The international experience that I keep talking about, the NZR, they love it, and they're very much gutted that Foster didn't have any as of late, so they're definitely going to be salivating at the possibility of Jamie Joseph applying for the job. The one thing though is that Jamie Joseph would have to take a pay cut if he was to become the All Blacks coach. Japan, they pay him very well, they look after him very well, and he's never publicly discussed his application for the job in the same way that Scott Robertson has. Robertson, however, I'm not sure if the NZR quite have the marketing intel to go his way. So what I'm going to say to conclude this video is that I think should Jamie Joseph apply for the job, he will absolutely get the job. I've also heard a few inside stories about Jamie Joseph, but I won't mention them now. So long story short, if he applies, he will get it. If he doesn't apply, it's going to go to Scott Robertson over Leon MacDonald, as Robertson has won more trophies and he's coached in Super Rugby for longer. Both of them have a great deal of ability to build culture. MacDonald was raised as assistant coach for a wee while at the Crusaders as well. He learned those skills from there, but overall, I do think Robertson will trump MacDonald should it come down to being between those two. Now that this video is over, thank you very much to my patrons. Your support is always appreciated. If you enjoyed this video, don't you ever forget to like it and subscribe to my channel as well, because this channel is my full-time job and I want to do as much as I can to help promote the game of rugby. Thank you so much for watching the video, guys, and it's your boy Max signing out.